Welcome back to Timo's Dinky Detailing. Today I'm going to be working on a Dinky 171 Hudson Commodore sedan. I got this one in a lot, and this one doesn't have a base, it doesn't have any wheels, there's just the body casting. So I'm going to have to fabricate a base for it and replace the wheels and tires. This Commodore sedan has been painted green. It was never originally green. There's hints of paint inside. You can see the blue in the wheel well. So I'm going to be going with a blue color. And it's going to be a fair bit of work because of the base and wheels. But other than that, it's a straightforward casting. And it's going to be two-tone paint. Most of these were originally in two-tone paint. I love this casting. It's the car is the gangster style car that I remember from the cartoons. I think it was Looney Tunes, but it may also have been Roger Rabbit. So if anybody knows, then certainly let me know below. It was a bunch of gangsters got into the car, and the car went around the corner and bent as it went around the corner. Anyway, to start out with, going a little bit different than usual. I'm doing this early in the morning. I don't want to wake people up, and I can't remember if it's early in the morning or it might have been in the evening, and my son is in the next room studying university, so I don't want to interrupt him. So to clean up these posts, I'm filing it very carefully and slowly, and then trying to pick the little bit of mushrooming off of these posts. So the base was somehow pried right off, and then the mushrooms on the posts were kind of bent down. So to make a base, I want to just have a little stud that sticks up that will let the base be registered. So it's a matter of filing it carefully, slowly, until there's just the little round stud sticking up. So I'm using my very nice Nicholson file I use for everything. It cuts really well. I recommend, if you're going to buy a file, get a good quality name brand file, not a Chinese file, because you will never be happy with that one. You'll be happy with a fancy file like this. This file, people, if you've watched my videos, know about it. The one edge has been ground smooth. That way, when I'm doing stuff like this, the edge that's on the part of the post I don't want to cut is untouched. I put a little tape there to protect the rest of the bodywork while I'm filing. So there you can see I got it down to just the post sticking up. So to make the base, first I put a piece of paper over it, and I just use my thumb and make a little fold, and that gives me the shape, and then I can reproduce that in my little piece of sheet metal. I also push with my thumb to get the position of the posts. So there you can see the shape. So I cut it out with a pair of scissors. Fits in there nice. It's easier to cut the paper, so I have a template now. Now this is stuff for putting on your windows. I got when I was fixing up some windows in the house, and this is left over. And I thought it was aluminum, and then my son pointed out, no, it's not aluminum, it's actually thin steel. So it's a little bit harder to cut, but it's also a little bit more firm. But it's very lightweight. That's why I thought it was aluminum. It didn't even occur to me that aluminum that thin would be much softer. So this is actually a really good material for me to use, because I can cut it fairly easily and file it down easily. I imagine if this was aluminum, I could probably just cut it with a pair of scissors, but I have to use tin snips on this. And these tin snips are a pretty rough tool, so I go just outside the line and then file it down to the right size later. So this just gets the main material off. I put it into the vise and I do a lot of filing. I'm not going to show you all the filing because it actually takes quite a long time to do it. But again, I'm using my Nicholson file, and it actually takes the material down pretty quickly, and it also gives me a nice smooth finish when I'm done. So you can see I'm putting it into my vise, which has smooth jaws that I've put on there myself. Here I go with a riffler. It's a curved file, and I get my shape down. Now I need to put holes. So there's where I pushed with my thumb, and then I go with the scriber so I can find my points, put a little scratch on there. And this is a spring-loaded center punch. And that puts a little dimple. And I'm not going to be doing this on the milling machine this time. Measuring the diameter, and I'm just going to drill it on the edge of my workbench with the hand drill. So first I go through with the center drill. I always use the center drill because it tends not to wander. I've put just a tiny dimple there, so if I put a hole with the center punch, it goes in the right spot. It's a very short drill, so it's easy to control. And then I go with my sizing drill. And I wind up with some holes in the edge of my workbench. So I clean the burrs off and see how it fits. And first try, absolutely perfect. So I did a good job. There I'm looking for the rear axle location because I'm going to have to drill holes and fold up the little flaps. And then after doing that on my phone with a picture of the base of the same model, I suddenly realized that there's another way to do this. There's a mark on the inside of the casting where the axle was. So that's perfectly located for where it needs to be. So now I go back and do it again, measure from the back, and I'm off by a millimeter or so. So that's okay. So I take my wheel from another car. So I measure so I know that my depth will be enough so that the wheel can turn. And then it gives me the location where I can drill my holes where the axle will go through. So this axle, because it goes, it stays inside the body when it's assembled. There's no mushrooms, it's just a straight axle with a plain end on each end, which really makes it easier for putting axles together. This car, this Hudson Commodore, had a special design that they thought would take everybody by storm. The wheels on the back are so far back that the seats inside are not interfered with by the wheels and tires, so the seat in the back seat is much wider than comparable cars at the time. And it was a clever design, and then new designs came and it all changed. But this car would have had, I mean, you can find antiques, or you can look at Jay Leno and he has one of these cars. Huge amount of room inside this car. Of course, it's a huge car, but even more than cars of similar size, there'd be more space inside because of the way they laid it out. And as a result, the frame goes on the outside of the wheels, which is why this car has the axle captured in there. And some of my other models, the British ones, had spats on them, so they were removable panels. But this one, the frame actually goes outside of the wheels. So there is no spats. You can't take them off because you'd be taking off a piece of the frame. So you can see I've drilled the holes for the axles, and these holes are just so I have a little rounded corner on that flap that sticks up. So I trimmed those with the tin snips. Now I got to straighten out the sheet metal and then bend up those flaps. So I'm going to do that with these parallel pliers. The teeth have been ground off, and I use this for all the little small sheet metal work. So I come to the edge where the hole is and bend it up, and now the hole is up above the base. So I'm basically reproducing what the original base looked like and the way it works. As usual, I'm trying to show you as much of the process as possible so you can see the work that goes in, but it's also interesting to see how it's done. If I just came and showed you the finished product, that's nice, but I like to show how I got there. That's the kind of videos I like the best too, is when I see everything that the restorer does in order to restore it. So there I have my base. Now to make an axle, I'm using a pop rivet. This one is steel, and then there's other pop rivets that are, oh no, this is for the front axle, so this one's aluminum. So I've got to file that down. So I file it down off screen, basically with the same file again until, because there's a little bit of roughness there to hold the aluminum rivet portion. So there, I've cut it to length, and now I'll file the end flat so that when I go to hammer a mushroom on the end, I'll start with a nice clean flat end, so it makes it easier to make the mushroom if it starts out nice and flat. So that just goes into the vise with the soft jaws, and then I take a file to the end. I don't know, if I didn't have this file, how I would do these jobs. So a couple of strokes and there we go. And there you have it. So this one's made out of aluminum. It's much easier for me to hammer a mushroom onto that. And so now we move on to drilling and tapping the posts. So for this, I'm going in the milling machine. Must have been a time of day when everybody was awake, so I can make noise, because that's a noisy machine. And as usual, I go in first with a center drill, and then I go in with the with my tap drill, and I'm using a little bit of Cool Tool, which is basically an oil product, and that keeps the drill from getting loaded, because the material for these castings is very chewy, and they tend to load up on the end of the drill bit, and they will break the end of the drill bit off. So I'm very careful to make sure that I keep the drill lubricated when I'm drilling those things. So there, that's done. Now to the workbench, and I tap these just using the tap handle and my Osborne Blue Wizard tap. The funny thing is, in a normal shop situation, you might break a tap every couple days if you're using them a lot. But I'm very careful, and my previous Blue Wizard tap I had for 30 years. And eventually broke, and maybe it broke because it had become a little bit too blunt. So here's another Blue Wizard that's had the point ground off, and that lets me get a deeper hole so that my screw will go all the way in. So there's my 440 hex button head cap screws. These are stainless steel ones that I bought from China for very cheap. So most of these models are put together using these screws. So I put the screws in place to protect the threaded hole. When I'm doing stuff like this, stripping the paint and then painting, the hole is protected. So there I put boiling water and some caustic soda, a little bit more, and you can see that green paint has come off. And in a couple minutes, casting is all clean. So now I go over it with the brass brush. Probably going to have to get a new brush. Here I go with stainless steel, and didn't show you a lot of the brushing, but you get the idea. Now these are hubs. They're turned steel hubs that I got from Steve Flowers. I get my parts from him. So far, most of my parts have come from him because he has the best prices. And of course, I order a bunch of stuff because the shipping is still pretty expensive from the Kingdom of Auixe. But it's worthwhile because if I buy a bunch of things, then the shipping doesn't seem like so much money. Now the base I'm doing with the hardware store paint. That can is running out, so I'm going to have to buy a new can, and then I did the other sides of the wheels. Now I had to go in and file and sand because the casting is a little bit rough in places. You can see I did quite a bit, and I took off casting marks off the rear fenders where there was a seam, so it makes it a more clean look at the end. That wouldn't have been done by Dinky. They just left the seams there. So this is my Tamiya fine surface primer. Highly recommend this stuff. It goes on beautifully and shows all the detail. My finish coat, this is the Duplicolor. It's what we get in Canada for when you do a car repair. Then you spray this stuff on. It's a very good quality enamel paint, and it dries very hard, so you can tape it up and it doesn't peel off like the hobby paints sometimes do. Now for the second color, the model I've chosen has two-tone light blue and white. So while the enamel paint is drying, I'm mixing up the paint that I'm going to use to spray. And as usual, I'm using Mr. Color Leveling Thinner. This thinner is designed so that it dries slower. So that way when you spray it on, it dries slowly so that it gradually smooths out and gives you a more shiny surface to the paint. So I've had very good luck with that, so that's what I always use now for the airbrush. Now taping, I'm using the Tamiya. This is like plastic tape. This is the flexible tape, and it's really good for doing models like this. There's long lines, but they have curves, and you just kind of stretch it and move it into position. It's kind of like white electrical tape. And then the rest of it I tape up with ordinary masking tape. Now in this case, I've left the bottom open because I'm going to spray inside blue as well. When Dinky made these toys, they sprayed the whole thing in the color first, and then they would put the white, so the inside is would be blue. So I want to paint white first and put my blue on top, so instead I'm just going to spray the blue inside when I'm painting the outside. I start out with a very light coat because what I want to do is get the edges of the tape so that it's not very runny paint, it's very dry paint if I just put the light coat. Then once that's dried, then I go like this and I put my shiny coat on. And by the time I'm putting the shiny coat, which might run and leak underneath the tape, that part has already been dried and it's not going to get under, and so far it's worked out well for me. And you can see I've painted the inside as well. So that paint, it's beautiful, comes out really nice and shiny. And now the hubs. These hubs are great. They're very crisp and they look just perfect. The original ones might be more original, but they are kind of cast and they're a little bit rougher. So here's the moment of truth, taking the tape off. That's just the ordinary masking tape first. So the line isn't perfect. It looks pretty good actually, but it's not perfect. But that's not the actual tape line, because the white tape is there. You can't really see it very well, but it's there. I'm very cautious. The paint is only dried for an hour or so, so I don't want to be touching it too much. And I don't want to let it dry too much because then it could glue the tape down, and that could be a problem. So it's kind of a delicate choice of timing. So that paint came out really, really nice, and the edges came out beautiful. So here you can see I've done the hubs, and they look beautiful, but on this method I have to paint them twice. So I've got my little non-stick bits of paper. This is baking paper, parchment paper, which is a miracle because nothing sticks to it. Here a little bit of paint actually did stick to it, so they're defying my logic. But you just come with my sharp tweezers and scrape it off a little bit. It's really just sitting on the surface. It's not glued down to the baking paper. And then I flip these over and put them back on. This way the paint, which is maybe half a day or day old, won't stick, and so it'll preserve the finish on it. And I paint the other side. Now I'm going to be doing some detailing, and I always have trouble with headlights, and this one I can see it's going to be a big problem because of the way the casting is. So I'm going to tape it off to paint it so that so I get a nice clean perfect circle. So I'm using this stuff. It's the marker pen. You probably can't buy this anymore. This marker pen is probably 30 years old, but the paint in it is just perfect. And this is not the chrome stuff. I have the chrome stuff, but I'm trying to do this one as much as I can like the original toy would have been. I'm not putting any extra embellishment on it at all. This is going to be, I'm aiming for making it like the original toy. So this is a pure restoration. I mean, a pure would have been, I would make a mask and they would actually spray the paint through a cardboard mask, and I've done that on, I should show you one day, I've done that on a toy a long time ago, and it works really nice, and you get that sprayed edge look. And maybe I'll start doing it again, but I'm kind of scared to do it because it can ruin a nice paint job. So I'm speeding this up. I'm showing you quick jumps because I think it gets kind of boring watching me paint this thing. And you can see on one point I had my hand shook and I overpainted, and I don't panic about that because I'm just gonna, you can see on the edge of the grill there, I'm just gonna paint it over with white when it's dry. So for the back I want to tape this because it's hard to get that bumper, the inner corner, so might as well tape it and be safe. Again, I'll show you quickly. Boom. The other corner. Boom. Now the only other detailing that this toy had, and it wasn't in all the models, but I was looking it up, and in later models they painted the tail lights. So there's tail lights in the casting, so at least I can do this and still say that it's somewhat authentic. I can't paint that nice chrome decoration on the trunk lid. And see, now I'm going where the blue oversprayed in those little corners, and I just cover it up with a little bit of white paint. And here's where the grill, where my hand shook, and so I paint that over as well. So now I don't have tires for this, and so I'm going with my O-rings, I ordered from China. They're exact size of the original tires, so they look perfect. And I really like them. They go on very easily, and they're exactly the same size. A little bit narrower, but nobody notices the narrowness, but just very marginally narrower. So now I've got my vice grips that I've modified with a groove on the one jaw, and the other jaw has been ground smooth. So for making my mushroom on the end, I'm clamping this firmly because I keep bending these things. And this is aluminum, so what I'm doing is I'm just putting it on top, and I'm relying on the vice grips to hold this. So that's a lot of hammering to get this right. And then at the end, it looks a little bit too much like it's been hammered, so I want to make it nicer. So I've got this tool that I made, piece of steel with a little indentation. Put the drill into hammer mode. It's not much, but it makes it nice and smooth, and it looks like a factory original axle with a very nice looking mushroom. I put those non-stick papers in between because the paint is only a couple days old, so just in case it wants to stick to the other hub, this way it doesn't. And my wheels are ready and my base is ready. So I take those screws, and they've been now painted blue along with the inside and the color on the outside. So I think those look more attractive like that, and then put in the base. You can see the wheels or the body completely covers that rear axle. So there we have it. It's done. So let's remind you of what we started out with. So that's my original casting that came without a base, without any wheels or axles. It had already been destroyed and repainted and destroyed again. So let's see what it looks like now. There we have it. This was an original paint scheme. It's a scheme that I like, so I chose this one to go with. There was blue on the model, but I have a feeling it was blue and light brown, so it was a different one. So I guess you could argue that I'm not a purist. I've gone with the design I like better, but it is an original design that this toy would have come in. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Timo's Dinky Detailing. If you did, remember to like and share and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos that I'm working on now. That's how you encourage me to make more videos like this one. So until next time, be seeing you.